Hey, y'all, as the world celebrates the World Cup, International Justice Mission's Freedom to Play campaign brings athletes and soccer fans together to help protect children from modern slavery and restore the freedom to play. Over 50 million people are trapped in modern slavery. One in four is a child, and every one of them deserves safety, dignity, and the freedom to play. Throughout the World Cup, IJM is shining a spotlight on the millions of children enslaved today and inviting us to help restore freedom that everyone deserves. Over 50 million people are trapped in modern slavery. One in four is a child, and every one of them deserves safety, dignity, and the freedom to play. Throughout the World Cup, IJM is shining a spotlight on the millions of children enslaved today and inviting us to help restore the freedom that everyone deserves. Join athletes, fans, and IJM in the fight to end modern slavery because everyone deserves the freedom to play. Visit IJM.org/freedom to play to learn more. What is up, Matt Freese? So thankful for you to take the time to come on Sports Spectrum and highlight a U.S. men's national team member.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm really excited. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, well, what an awesome time, not just for you, but for all the people in the US. We are so excited to cheer you on this summer. And I know you spend a majority of your time training and getting ready on the field. But the question I ask everyone on the show is, what are you all about at the moment? It could be something super big and serious, or like a new snack, a new song that you're all about. So, what is Matt all about right now?
Ooh, all about, I feel like it sounds weird, but I'm really just trying to do everything the same that I've been doing for the last 2, 3 years, if that makes sense. Really just not trying to change anything up right now. Um, there is an artist that I'm big into right now. I think it's called Hugel. It's kind of like this house music type Afro beats. It's pretty good.
All right, I like it. And yes, keep it the same. Whatever's working, let's keep it going through the summer. But so cool that it is on U.S. soil, which I'm sure is such a topic of conversation. What's the dialogue been like between you and your teammates and just the opportunity you have to play here in the States?
Yeah, I mean, it's super exciting, um, regardless of where the tournament's being hosted. I think just to be part of the group and to be part of the larger pool of people that the final roster would be picked from. So that's obviously very exciting. And then the fact that it's going to be in America, I think it's in a way it adds some energy to the group and a little bit of confidence. From our dialogue, our conversations.
Certainly. And I know you've worn the USA across your chest before internationally, but the World Cup is it's definitely a little bit different. It means a little bit more. So would you mind just describing what that means to you to wear the red, white, and blue this summer?
Yeah, well, I mean, nothing is, the roster's not out yet. Nothing is um, finalized pretty much for another 3 weeks, I think, 3, 4 weeks maybe. So, there's still a lot of time between now and then. But if it all works out, and I'm there with the group, I think it's really indescribable to it's difficult to put it into words. To be if I'm part of that group in such a big moment for the country and the sport in the country.
Well, you spend ton of time with them on and off the field, training and the celebratory moments, but also the hard moments, probably that no one's going to see on social media or on game day, the real blood, sweat, and tears of training. How would you describe maybe the personality of this national team group?
Personality is, I think it's a very close group. There's group chats that go along, when we're not together, just with casual banter and sending when we see each other after games and stuff, within our own club team. So I definitely think it's a strong group, and I also think it's a very confident group. It's there's some players really playing at the highest level in the world, and so I think there's a lot of hopefully quiet confidence to the group.
I'm excited to see that and learn more about this group. But take me back. When did soccer first come to the picture for you?
Soccer, my interest first peaked, I would say, when I was 7-ish. 7 or 8 maybe. I was living in South Carolina, and obviously in South Carolina, football, American football, is the big sport. And my neighbor played soccer. He was the goalkeeper for the high school soccer team, and he was just kind of this guy I looked up to. And I started taking more of an interest in playing it a little bit more in the backyard with my brother. And kind of since then, it's been at the front of my mind.
That's wild. Well, thank goodness for him and his interjection into your story because you probably wouldn't be here without that small moment. But when you just think back on your soccer journey, what was maybe a transformational season or moment where you felt, man, I really took my game to the next level and helped you get to where you are today?
Yeah, I think that the big year for me was actually 2020. Surprisingly, obviously, it's an unusual period of time, very difficult period of time, pretty much for the world. And I had previously in 2019 had a rough season, several injuries, so some problems like that. And so 2020, I just totally. It sounds weird, but I just refound my love for the game and that motivation, and really just dedicated every second of every day to coming out of that year better than I entered that year.
That's really cool because for so many people, and I'm sure so many athletes, the game looked different. And so maybe it robbed them of the joy of playing the sport because you might have had a mask on, or you weren't even able to pass within 6 feet of each other, or you couldn't practice or even play. So that's really cool that that was actually a year of transformation for you. And I love
Yeah.
what I love about Sports Spectrum is we get to learn about not just the athlete, but what the Lord has done in the athletes' lives. And so I'm curious for you, maybe in that year when it did look hard, or even just throughout your soccer career, when did your relationship with Christ really begin?
Uh, During that year, or more broadly?
Yeah, just more broadly.
More broadly, it's always just, faith has always just been part of my life. I grew up going to Catholic mass with my mom and my siblings pretty much every Sunday, Sunday school, and we would go in our Radnor Rec soccer jerseys because we would go to soccer games, Sunday afternoon games right after. And so it's always been, part of my journey and part of my belief. And then, when I went to college and kind of became an adult, went on my own. I was, I guess there's this decision. Oh, is this going to be something I continue or not? But for me, it wasn't really a decision. It was just, that foundational belief and faith was already so strong that, I never really questioned it, and I just kept going to mass and kept doing Bible studies with teammates, things like that, and it just became very natural.
I love that you describe going to mass in your jersey because I can relate to some of that having church on in the car on the phone, or our parents saying, hey, we're going to go another day, a different day, because you have to find a way to fit it in when you're trying to be an elite athlete, even at a young age. I'm curious, just for you in your own professional life, you talked about how you've now carried that on into your adult and professional career. What did you see maybe from your family at an early age of prioritizing faith that now has helped you in the busyness and chaos of just your life today?
Uh, I think it was just the flexibility that we found. Yeah, I think the flexibility has been something that stuck with me. In right now, for example, this past Sunday I had a game, and this next Sunday I have a game. But you have to find ways of either doing a Bible study with teammates, which has been incredible. Both the national team and with my club team, and then secondly, not being afraid to to take things into your own hands in terms of finding your own time to spend with scripture, or talking about the Bible with teammates, with friends. Right now I'm listening to what's it called? I think Bible in a Year by Father Mike Schmitz, and it's been fantastic, and it kind of makes me able to, even when I'm on the road, or even if it's a busy stretch, make sure I'm spending some time every day, or hopefully every day, spending time with my faith.
That's really cool. And you mentioned just the Bible study and the fellowship with teammates. I'm curious, how does that maybe enrich or just impact your experience with them on and off the field?
Yeah, it's funny because it's not really something you think about, but there's just this kind of automatic connection that you make when you talk about deep subjects like faith and the Bible on a weekly basis with a teammate. You're going to trust in a little bit more on the field, or at the very least, you're going to care more about them. You're going to be very invested in their success, and I'm invested in all my teammates' success. But there's a little bit that just kind of happens subconsciously, when you make that deeper connection through faith.
They're gonna hustle back on defense a little bit extra because they know the heart of Matt Freese. They're
Let's
gonna
hope
work a
so.
little bit harder. And I love to hear that, and it's so special, like you said. I'm curious, is there maybe one specific teammate who just in this last, couple years of your life or even recently has really encouraged you in your faith and you felt a lot of encouragement from them?
Yeah, I mean, certainly the one that comes to my mind is his name's Malachi Jones. Um, he is from Nashville, Tennessee. He was born in, I believe, Sierra Leone, and went through a very difficult last 2 years with injuries and injuries and things like that. And he's just incredibly religious, and his whole family is. And he has this deep trust that there's a plan and a deep faith that everything will work out the way it's supposed to. And that's been, I think, very inspiring for me. I've told him that too.
So good, good. That's so important too, because in so many times in life, but also if you just take the small focus of sport, it's going to just be up and down constantly, no matter if you're on the best team or the worst team. It's just so many highs and lows. And to be able to have teammates who can pick you up and encourage you when you need it, you can't always pour out. Sometimes you need to be poured into. So I love
Yeah.
that. But just for your position, obviously long soccer games and then your moment comes and it is crucial. You have to be on. It's such a high pressure position. How does your faith help you maybe just in game day in the role that you play on the field?
I think there's been several times where two main ways I would say. The first is just I remind myself in, like, vocally, I say it out loud. I always remind myself God's got me. God's got me, and you know God's looking over me and watching over me. And then the second, and this is a very big way that I think faith has motivated me, as well as kind of guided my career and my soccer journey, is the fact that I think God's given me so many opportunities in general, but let's just say, focus on soccer. God's given me so many opportunities within this game and within my career. I still have a role to play in that. I still have to do my part and take that opportunity and do something with it. I can't just sit there and not work hard, or not use the lessons that God enabled my parents to teach me, which is hard work and teamwork and selflessness. And so, I just constantly remind myself that there is also, you know, a role that I have to play, an active role that I have to play you know, in gratitude, through gratitude for these opportunities.
I love that you said it's an active role because I think so many athletes can think, "Oh, well, like I'm just giving it to God." Like, all right, it's like, no, you have to
Yeah,
do the hard work, and for him to use you, you want to put your best foot forward so that he can bless you with wins, with different accolades, with the opportunity to use your God-given ability. So it's so awesome. I think it's a great reminder for young athletes and athletes anywhere, just in whatever you're doing in life, like work hard so that God can use what he's given you in the hard work that you put forward. But you
yeah.
mentioned just how you remind yourself that God's got you, and I'm curious, is there a specific moment in a recent game or a game that just really mattered where you felt, "Hey, I had to really remind myself God's got me?"
Nothing specific stands out, because I think it's very often. It's not just in soccer, but it gives me a great peace of mind, even outside of soccer, that I just remember that God's got me.
You mentioned just stewarding well the talent of soccer that the Lord has given you, which I think is so awesome. And with that also comes the opportunities outside of soccer and being a superhero to so many young soccer players and just young athletes everywhere. And I did notice that you're involved with an organization, South Bronx United, a nonprofit that supports families in the area on and off the field. And so I'm curious, just for you, how is your perspective on the role that you play as really that figure in the community developed and evolved as your career has gone on?
Yeah, I mean, I think there has to be a reason. We often talk about this, at the professional level. There has to be a reason for for all of this, and part of the reason that I try to look for, or try to you know capture is giving back and inspiring others. And it's a little bit funny. It's a little bit awkward for me to admit to myself that I am in that position, because in a way, you're admitting that people look up to you, and that's a unusual thing. The way I was brought up is just a weird thing to think about. But it is true. You have to play your role, and your role, for example, within that community, I play there in front of 25,000 people every Saturday. I can have an impact in that community, and so I'm trying to do that.
It's really special, and I'm sure that impact will have ripple effects and continue on and on. And something really interesting about sport is that it can have the impact on not just you, but other people. But I'm curious for you, when you look at your life and kind of take a zoom out effect, obviously, a lot of big things ahead for you coming up. But how do you feel the Lord has used soccer in your life as a sport to teach you more about things off the field and just outside of that?
Yeah, I mean, well, certainly the biggest teacher in my life has been soccer. I've learned so much about failure, so much about success, so much about you know teamwork and selflessness, and um, a will to compete, and a will to suffer. And I think all the failures, successes, everything I just mentioned, um, has that's been created by God. And so in that way, it's indirectly teaching me about so many things off the field, and I'm super grateful for that.
That's awesome. And as an athlete, you gotta be a sponge, right? And so I think you take that same perspective and attitude when you come humbly before the Lord. Like, I'm not God, so I'm gonna keep growing throughout this life and continue evolving. And so I love that. But I do have to ask you, because hopefully we're going to see some awesome moments this summer, but specifically about penalty kicks. I got to get into the goalie's head, because if listeners are watching you this summer and there's a penalty kick moment, we want to know, like, what is it like? First of all, just what is it like to be in that position in that moment?
I just like to have fun with it as much as I can, and it's obviously a high pressure situation, and I love pressure, but in a way, it's important to remove yourself from that pressure, and just remember that you've done this in practice. You just have to allow. At least what I try to do is I allow myself to be athletic, because I'm very fortunate to be very athletic, and the worst thing you can do is become so nervous and so rigid that you don't capitalize on any athleticism that you have.
Is there a routine or phrase or just physical thing that you do right before that moment to get your mind right?
Not really. Just try to take it like any other moment.
There you go. You're calm, cool, and collected. I don't think I would have that same ability right away. So it's definitely God given for you. But I'm curious, with those high pressure moments and playing on just the biggest stages that you have, how have you learned to handle the bright spotlight, but also like lean into that athletic ability that you've been given and the hard work that you've put forward?
Well, I think that what I mentioned earlier about playing my part, and and having an active role in the opportunities that God's given me. That's kind of exactly what it is. I just, in those big moments, and when things are high pressure, let's say, or the spotlight's on the goalkeeper at that moment. You remember how hard you've worked, and that gives me a lot of confidence, uh, because I don't think many people in this world outwork me, and so that's really what I like to remind myself of.
That's awesome. And I'm sure there are going to be so many young athletes who watch you even just recently coming up in the World Cup that would love to wear your jersey someday. So maybe what's one piece of advice, knowing what you know now, that you would say to a young soccer player in their career?
I always give the same two pieces of advice. The first is that young soccer players, you have to believe in yourself, because there will be plenty of people that don't believe in you, and you've got to be the one that kind of at no point stops believing in yourself. That doesn't mean you can't be open minded and learn and change the way you do something, but it does mean that you do have to believe that um, you know with the right work ethic and with the right open mindedness and adaptability, you can accomplish something. So that's important to remember. And then the second thing is I always tell them, that you have to work hard. You have to work harder than than pretty much everyone else in the room that you're standing in.
Well, there you go. And it is easier to say, but so intentional with the hard work and just so cool to hear your story and the journey that you've been on. And we are so excited to cheer you on. It's so incredible opportunity for me to get to have this conversation with you. And we so appreciate your time. And we are cheering
Thank
you
you so
on and
much.
off the field.
Thank you so much. This was really fun, and I really appreciate it.
Hey, USA all the way. Let's go.